welcome to the Spot On Insurance Podcast, sponsored by Insurance Licensing Services of America, ILSA. This is Ted Tavares.
And this is Arlene Tavares.
Before we get started, remember to click on the subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode.
Hello and welcome back to Spot On Insurance. This is your host, Doug Foresta, and today with me is David Siekman from Agency Performance Partners, and we're going to be talking about inbound sales strategies for personal lines. Before we do that, though, I want to remind you to subscribe. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes so you don't miss any new episodes. David Siekman is my guest. He's the performance consultant for Agency Performance Partners. David Siekman, welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Thank you. So I know we're going to talk about inbound sales strategies for personal lines. So why don't we kind of get to it? Let's start with the very first part, which is the greeting. Can you say a little bit about some tips about what to do? At first, actually, maybe I should say this. This would be for specifically what we're talking about here is for agents or CSRs, right? Who would be taking these inbound sales calls?
Yeah, absolutely. This is intended to be a sales call, though it could be applied to a service call as well as some components of this. But yeah, these are inbound calls, people calling in, and somebody sitting in the office taking the call.
So yeah, let's start with the greeting. So what should we be looking for when, you first pick up that phone and you're saying hello?
Yeah, absolutely. I always say create your own greeting. So you want one greeting, you want it to be consistent. So write up your own. Some components are some level of a salutation, thank you for calling. It's a great day at whatever the case may be. And you want to use your own name. And if it is a warm transfer, you want to use the caller's name. So something like, thank you for calling, Bob. This is Dave from ABC Agency. So it's always consistent. I would add on to that as well that you always want to have some type of positive attitude. Some people like to be really over the top when they do it, and some people just like to have positive, confident attitude that they portray. What you don't want to do is something that is just, I've heard some really bad ones over the years. People just answer the phone, insurance, right. It's just a neutral tone, a negative tone. Just a worst way to start that call on somebody that is potentially asking to give you their money.
So yeah, say a little bit more about why that matters, right? If I just pick up the phone and go insurance, well, why does that matter? Why is that important?
Yeah, so first there's a lack of branding. This happens to me all the time when I call someplace. It frustrates me to no end where I have to ask if I called the right number. Is this Bob's insurance agency, or did I hit an underwriter at some company? I have no idea. Some people. It's
a pizza shop. Like where did that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a great point. Some people answer. They'll do half of it and they'll say, "This is Bob," and Bob who? Bob from where? I have no idea if I'm in the right place. So when you start with a good message to the beginning, that's cliche, but you never get the second chance to make the first impression. Well, you never get a second chance to make the second impression or the third impression or the fourth impression either. So keeping it consistent, keeping it positive helps to create some brand awareness. It gives the caller some comfortability in terms of where they're at and making sure that they can just say, okay, here's what I need, instead of having that awkward moment, as an immediate start to the call, starting that call behind the eight ball from the beginning.
Thank you. So let's talk about the next step, which is relationship building and setting the rules of the road. So where would that fit in, and what does that look like?
Sure. So these are really two different components that happen at immediately following the greeting. The first is the relationship build, and this is something you're going to continue throughout the whole call. So typically when you're getting these calls, the person doesn't know you and they might not even know the agency. So you want to make sure that you are continuously building that relationship, whether you find out, find a common interest, whether you both have kids, you both have dogs, you both love, fast cars, you both love the same sports team. Find something where you can kind of build that relationship. And then setting the rules of the road is really about making sure that you're understanding what they're looking for. So is this somebody who's calling because they want to switch agents because they're upset they just had a bad claims experience? Are they shopping with 10 different agents and you just have to be one of those? Understand why they're calling and then identify the reason why you're going to get the business. So if the person is calling 10 different agents, okay, well, they're obviously looking for some kind of price reduction to what they're paying. So figure out what that is. Figure out what they're paying today and what you need to do in order for them to come on board with you. If they're upset with a claim situation or a billing situation, or, their agent, they didn't feel like their agent had their back, or their agent wasn't open, on a Saturday, figure out what those reasons are and be able to set an expectation so that when you get to the sale at the end, if they have any objection, you can lean back on this very beginning piece and say, hey, when we first spoke, you said that you were upset that your agency wasn't, open on a Saturday. And we have office hours from 9 to 10 or 9 to 12 on Saturday. In addition to that, I'm getting you these great coverages at this great place, but you can use this information to get that sale later on in the call.
Yeah, we had chatted a little bit before we went live on air. And, one of the things that you were talking about is that idea that really understanding what you need to do to get the business, it has such a payoff later down the road for agents.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to establish that up front because we can make assumptions on what it's going to take to get the business. And unfortunately, a lot of us go right to price and they look at what they're currently paying and, I'm saving them $200 a year. And I just assume that that's what the caller is looking for. But that prospect might be upset because a claim didn't get paid and he wants to make sure he has, rental because that was his experience. He didn't have that on his auto policy, or he didn't have a replacement cost coverage on his homeowner policy and had a bad experience there, or, whatever the reason why they're calling, you want to make sure that you identify that. We're still going to provide the same expertise, review coverages, get him the best rate we can. We're going to still do all of those steps, but we want to make sure that we know the specific reason why they're calling so that we can use that in our close at the end.
That's great. Yeah, and don't always assume that it's just on price.
Absolutely.
Great. So the next one is gathering info and quoting. So what's important to look at during that stage?
Absolutely. So this is the most boring part of the call, right? So you've started, you've done your greeting, you're positive, you showed some, you found some similar interest, you have some great conversations about what you're able to do, who you stand for, what are you going to do moving forward. And now we get into the boring part of the call, right? We have to find out, how many drivers you have, what's the age of your roof, all of these really mundane questions that can really lose the caller. Because the point in bringing a prospect to the stage in the sale where you're providing the quote is not just to give them a number, but it's to get them there in a manner where they really feel like they want to buy a policy from you. You have a relationship with them. So during this process, there's two things you can do. You can show your expertise. So this is a great area to identify maybe missing discounts that the insured didn't realize that they could have had on their policy. Certainly gaps in coverage. You can explain coverages to them. This is a way where you can continue to engage in more interesting manner than just doing the data collection. And really what this does over time is that this builds the trust between you and the prospect. Because again, going back to our original point, they don't really know you when they call in. So this is also part of that relationship build. So you're building your trust up, you're showing your expertise. So when it comes to present the quote, they're feeling a little bit more comfortable and they're really ready to buy. You just need to get, to the quote, get them to say yes and, do the paperwork. But this area here is the time where we spend the most amount of time with them. And if it's boring and mundane, it's not going to result in a positive experience that's necessary to close the quote at the end.
So what I kind of hear you saying in there, it's like the process and the product. Obviously, if we just focus on the product, which is, okay, get them the quote, we're missing that opportunity. The agent is missing that opportunity to say, hey, let me show you. I really do know, I really do understand insurance. I do understand the coverages. I am looking out for your best interest. I think one of the things you've been talked about is one of the things that builds trust is if you show that you can that you can, I mean, I know we talked about it's not all about price, but if you show them that they have a better option or you can lower their rate, well, that's obviously not in your best interest, but you're still doing it, which means that you are trustworthy or that they can trust that you'll look out for their interest as well. Would that be correct?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to make sure that they feel like you're doing what is right for them. So a great way to do that, as you said, is in the discount area. There's no benefit to anyone except for the consumer when it comes to a discount. So it's a great way to show them that you have their best interest at heart. That also allows you to do things like upsell a coverage because they're not feeling like everything that you're putting in front of them is just increasing their premium. So it's a little easier to say, I don't feel like you have the right coverage in this area. Let's get you up a level or 2 levels, or here's the maximum you can get, without them feeling like you're just hammering home everything that's in your best interest, which they're from their perspective is a higher premium.
Thank you. So really paying attention to that process and how we do it. The next one I want to discuss is quote presentation and ask. Can you explain that and say a little bit more?
Sure, absolutely. The quote presentation part is easy. This is the piece where you're going to lean a little bit on your the relationship you've built and the expertise you've shown and the trust you've built in order to be able to present the quote that you feel is in their best interest. You want them to feel like they are actually getting an expert's opinion on what they need for insurance. I've never met an insurance agent that says, I love to quote, or I'm a quoting machine, or that's my job is to quote insurance. Our jobs are to provide expert opinion, to sell insurance, and really to tie those two things together. So that presentation really shouldn't just be, here's the bottom line. You want to walk through the coverages. You want to explain it to them. And again, this can be a boring component. So you don't want to take, 20 minutes to explain monoline auto policy, but you do want to walk through the coverages a little bit. And then the most important part, if you've done everything, now you come to the ask. And this is an area, especially in personal lines, where a lot of agents just don't have a good comfort level of getting from doing all of this work up front and then saying, okay, now it's time to ask for the sale. So you can't be afraid to ask for the sale. And then just as important, once you've asked for the sale, once you've laid it out, you've made your case. It's kind of like in a court, the defense rests. Like, you need to stop. You can't oversell it. You need to know when to be quiet. You need to offer the sale, lean on everything that you've done up to that point, hold your breath, and let the prospect be the next person to speak.
I think for some people, maybe it's just dealing with the discomfort of the silence. Do you have any suggestions or thoughts about just how to deal with that?
I've heard all kinds of different ways people do it. I've heard people count in their head. I've heard people think about, something that they did earlier the night before. I've heard of people putting their phone on mute and screaming just to I want to talk, but I know that I can't. You need to use, you're right, that silence can be uncomfortable. You need to use that to your advantage because the prospect is feeling the same way. And if you've done your ask in the right way, they know it's their time, their chance to respond. And you really want to position it you don't want to ask in a manner where, you don't want to say something along the lines of, does this sound good to you? Are you ready to move forward? You don't want to give them a yes or a no where the no means we're not going to buy the insurance. Put it in a position such as, I think that I've been able to solve your, all the concerns you had on your insurance here. Would you like to do the down payment on credit card, or would you like me to set you up on EFT?
Right. Okay, great.
And then nothing. And let them come back with, oh, hold on, I still have questions. Let them have to get out of their comfort zone and question you, as opposed to making it just nice and easy for them to say, oh, let's just do it. Here's my credit card information.
Spot On Insurance is sponsored by ILSA, Insurance Licensing Services of America, America's premier licensing and regulatory compliance experts. To learn more about ILSA and the services they provide, visit ilsainc.com. What you said about them coming back, they may come back with more questions or they may come back with some other objections. So let's talk about that next piece about how to handle objections?
The best way to handle objections is to know that they're coming. So in our industry, there's only so many objections that can be put out there. They're going to say they want more time. They're going to say they're waiting on more quotes. They're going to say they need to speak to someone else. There's only a handful of objections that are going to come down. So what you need to do is list out what those objections are, the ones that you hear, and have your response ready so that you're not fumbling with how do I respond to this particular objection. Even before they're halfway through the objection, you already know what you're going to say. And the key to creating these responses is to make sure that you're not being argumentative or defensive. You want to do what I call the roll with it. So when they say, let's go with the, I need some time to think about it objection. So you roll with it. So you say something along the lines of, I understand that this is a big decision for you, as opposed to, well, what do you need time for?
Right.
You just
roll.
Come
on, just do it. Right.
Yeah, just do it. Okay. It's just not going to work. And nobody likes to be questioned, even when they don't know what they're talking about. So even though you've presented to them great coverages at a great price, some people just need to take that beat to understand it a little bit more. You can even fall on the sword yourself a little bit. One of the best ones that I've heard is, when typically when somebody says that they need more time, it's kind of a fake excuse. It's a fake objection. Typically what that means is they're waiting on other quotes, which is probably the majority of the time, or they don't really understand it, but are kind of too embarrassed to kind of say to you, I don't understand this component. So something along the lines of, I fully understand that this is a big decision for you. A lot of times when people tell me they need more time, it's because I failed to explain something clearly. Is there a component of the policy, the quote, that you would like to go over in more detail? So spin it off, pivot it back up into kind of the ask a little bit into the presentation. And maybe they'll say no. And maybe they'll be honest with you. I'm waiting for more quotes. Maybe you'll get a more detailed objection. And then you just roll into that response as well.
And, you talk about providing that solution, right? So whatever the objection is, can you give some examples? So that was a great example of I need more time. I know you did mention as well, sometimes people really are the kind of people that just take time, like they don't make a decision right at that moment. Can you say a little bit about that, that sort of prospect who really does need a bit of time?
Sure. So if you're doing the steps previous to this, first of all, you'll probably be avoiding some objections, right? Because you built some trust, you built some expertise. That person who may have said to you, I need more time, may not even bring that up because now they're comfortable with you. But if it truly is somebody who you're going through the process, you just know this person is one of those people that just likes to take things slow. The objection's coming, you hit the objection. In an ideal world, we would get that yes at the end of every presentation and every ask. What you don't want to do is beat someone up to the point where somebody who is going to say yes to you tomorrow turns into a no today. So if you truly feel like it's a legitimate objection in terms of this is the real objection, they just need a night because they've never made a decision same day in their lives, all you can really do is make sure you're setting your next appointment. So it's not, oh, I need some time. Oh, okay. Well, why don't you call me back when you're ready to move forward? You need to offer some solution. So I typically say if it's morning, try for the afternoon. If it's afternoon, try for the next morning. So, if it's 3:00 in the afternoon, I fully understand that this is a big decision for you. I'd like you to take the night to look at what I propose. How's 9:00 tomorrow morning for us to get back on the phone together?
Got it.
So you're just setting that. You're creating a small win, even though you're not getting, the commitment to buy.
But you are getting at least a level of commitment in the form of a next call of a follow-up.
Absolutely. Correct.
So we've made the sale with your help here, and let's talk about post-sale activities. So what are some of the post-sale activities that would continue continue the process here?
Yeah. So post-sale activities, number one thing that I see that can really throw a wrench in the client relationship, because now they're a client and no longer a prospect. Make sure that you're fully executing the policy and doing all of the entry that's necessary. The worst thing we can do is once we get somebody on board is for them now to have a bad onboarding experience. I forget to issue the policy on the company website. I forget to, mark them as a policy sold in my sales system. I forget to leave the correct activities in my agency management system. All of these steps matter when it comes to the customer experience. So if they have a bad customer experience, you're going to call them for a referral, which we'll talk about in a minute, or they're going to get their renewal in a year. And the last thing that they're going to have in their mind is this bad experience, even if you did such a great job selling them. So you want to make sure that you're taking it all the way across the finish line, doing all of the steps. And that includes anything after you get, your signed application and your down payment check.
Great. Excellent. And then let's talk about the referrals and testimonials. I mean, I know that's really important as well, right, for continuing business.
Right. This is key. So we can sell one policy to one person. We can sell 2 or 3 policies to one person. But why would we want to stop there? If we really are doing a great job from our greeting through our execution of the policy, why are we stopping there? We can get testimonials, which we all know online testimonials are such a big deal right now, because even if I get a referral from someone, I'm still going to go and check them out online. If I do a Google search and they come to the top, I'm still going to see what people are saying about them. So asking people for testimonials is a great way to drive additional business. And then obviously referrals. We all love referrals. I'd say 9 out of 10 agents I talk to around the country, they tell me that their only source, or at least their biggest source of business, is from referrals. But what I want to know is, do we have a program in place? And I'm not talking about a referral program where we give $5 if we get a referral. I'm talking about an in-house process to actually drive referrals, especially from new clients, because that opens up a whole other circle of influence that we didn't have before that person walked in the door. So we need to have a process in place, and it's probably a combination of these: emails, video, phone calls. How are we asking our new clients, and honestly our existing clients, how are we asking them to refer us?
Great. Beautiful. I love it. My guest today has been David Siekman. He's a performance consultant for Agency Performance Partners. David, I do want to ask you a last question before I kind of throw out there, how can people reach you and all that. One question that I wanted to ask you was about, I think especially some of our young or not so young agents. One of the things they're really curious about is about kind of how do they do what you've done if they wanted to, for example, become performance consultants and move into this other area of insurance. I'm just curious if you could say just a quick bit about sort of your career trajectory and how you've come to where you are.
Yeah, I would say start with experience. So there's no substitution for having been there. Anyone that has had a teacher or professor knows that the best ones were the ones that spent some time in the industry. So I've been in the insurance industry for over 18 years, almost 20 years now. Been on the agency side for more than half of that, and been doing sales training, managing salespeople, sales coaching, helping others be successful in both sales and retention, has given me the ability to not just be able to get on the phone and sell an insurance policy, but to be able to take that knowledge and transfer it, whether you're new in the industry or you've been in the industry for a while. I mean, we can all get better, and it's great to be able to talk to somebody who has been there and is continuing, especially on the sales side, to sell.
Thank you so much. And of course, if people are looking for performance consulting or they want to learn more, they want to work with you, where should we send them? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Sure. I would say go to our website, agencyperformancepartners.com. You can find us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook certainly as well. You can reach me directly at david@agencyperformancepartners.com. Find me on LinkedIn, David Siekman, Siekman, or you can call me directly, 401-332-8904.
David Siekman, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Doug.
Thank you.
By the way, our show notes and bonus resources can be found on spotoninsurance.com. Subscribe now so you don't miss a single episode.
Thanks for joining us.